The morning sun cast long shadows through the dusty windows of Roosevelt High's science lab, where Maria Rodriguez sat alone, 40 minutes before first period. Her worn notebook lay open on the lab bench, its margins filled with intricate sketches of solar panel configurations and scribbled equations. The 16-year-old's fingers traced the edge of a diagram she'd drawn the night before, a modified photovoltaic cell design that had come to her while helping at her parents' grocery store. "Another early morning, Miss Rodriguez?" Ms. Sarah Chen's voice carried a mixture of pride and concern as she entered the classroom, her arms laden with graded papers and a half-empty cup of coffee. The young science teacher had grown accustomed to finding Maria here, pursuing her own experiments while other teenagers were still hitting their snooze buttons. "I had an idea about improving solar efficiency in limited space applications," Maria replied, her accent slightly more pronounced in her excitement. She pushed her glasses up her nose, a nervous habit that surfaced whenever she shared her thoughts. "You know how in our neighborhood most people live in apartments or small houses with barely any roof space? I think I found a way to maximize energy capture in vertical installations." Ms. Chen set down her materials and peered over Maria's shoulder, her eyes widening as she studied the calculations. After 7 years of teaching at Roosevelt High, she'd seen plenty of bright students, but Maria was different. The girl didn't just learn, she innovated. "Let me pause here. I notice I'm starting to repeat the previous version. Would you like me to continue with a fresh, original 3,000-word chapter that builds on these opening paragraphs but takes the story in new directions? This will help ensure we're creating unique content rather than repeating the earlier attempt." "This is impressive work," Ms. Chen said, pointing to a particular equation. "But have you considered the cost factor? That's always been the biggest barrier to solar adoption in communities like ours." Maria nodded eagerly, flipping to another page covered in cost analyses and material calculations. "That's what kept me up last night. See, traditional solar installations are expensive because they're designed for optimal conditions. Perfect roof angles, maximum sun exposure. But in our neighborhood, we don't have those luxuries. So I started thinking, what if we designed a system specifically for imperfect conditions?" The enthusiasm in Maria's voice reminded Ms. Chen of herself 15 years ago, before she'd turned down a lucrative position at a major tech company to teach in South LA. She'd never regretted that decision, but watching the school's resources dwindle year after year tested her resolve. Last semester, they'd lost funding for the Advanced Placement Physics program. The month before, the school board had cut the robotics club's budget in half. The harsh buzz of fluorescent lights flickering to life interrupted their discussion. Principal James Washington's voice crackled over the ancient intercom system, making his daily announcements through speakers that had seen better days during the Carter administration. Ms. Chen glanced at the ceiling where water stains formed, abstract patterns on the acoustic tiles, another item on the endless repair list. Outside the classroom, Roosevelt High was awakening. Students filtered in, many wearing worn backpacks and carrying smartphones with cracked screens, symbols of families trying to balance modern necessities with limited resources. The school, like much of South Los Angeles, existed in a state of perpetual making do. Diana Martinez, Maria's best friend since 7th grade, burst into the classroom with unusual energy for 7:45 a.m. "Maria, you're not going to believe what I just overheard in the office." She dropped into her usual seat, her eyes bright with excitement. "Principal Washington's been on private calls all morning, and Mrs. Thompson said something about a VIP visitor next week." Before Maria could respond, the intercom crackled back to life. Principal Washington's voice returned, this time with an unusual tremor of excitement. "Attention Roosevelt High students and faculty. I have an extraordinary announcement. Next week we will be honored with a very special visitor. Tesla CEO and SpaceX founder Elon Musk will be touring our science department as part of his new educational initiative." The classroom erupted in chaos. Ms. Chen raised her hands, trying to restore order as students pulled out their phones, social media already buzzing with the news. Maria sat perfectly still, her heart pounding. She'd been following Musk's work on sustainable energy for years, cutting out articles about Tesla's innovations and pasting them into her research journal. "There's more," Principal Washington continued once the initial excitement had died down. "Mr. Musk will be observing several classes and participating in a Q&A session with selected students." Diana grabbed Maria's arm. "You have to be one of those students. Your solar panel designs. This is your chance." But Maria was already shrinking into herself, shaking her head. Public speaking made her nervous enough in Spanish. In English, under pressure, in front of someone like Elon Musk? The very thought made her stomach churn. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of excitement and speculation. In every class, teachers struggled to maintain focus as students whispered about the upcoming visit. By lunch, wild rumors were circulating. Musk was going to build a Tesla factory in South LA. He was scouting for young engineering talent. He was planning to launch Roosevelt High's next science project into space. Maria sat alone in her usual spot behind the library, picking at her lunch while reviewing her notebook. The solution seemed so clear on paper: modified solar panels that could be installed on vertical surfaces, maximizing energy capture in urban environments where space was at a premium. A distribution system that would make sustainable energy accessible to communities that had been left behind by the Green Revolution. But explaining these ideas to one of the world's most innovative entrepreneurs? The thought alone made her hands shake. "You're not actually thinking of passing up this opportunity, are you?" Ms. Chen's voice startled Maria from her thoughts. The science teacher sat down beside her, unwrapping her own lunch, the same turkey sandwich she brought every day. "I don't know if I'm ready," Maria admitted, closing her notebook. "My English is perfectly fine," Ms. Chen interrupted. "But this isn't about your English, is it? It's about believing your voice deserves to be heard." Maria stared at the ground, thinking about her parents, how they'd left everything behind in Mexico 13 years ago, carrying nothing but 2 suitcases and endless determination. Her father still worked 2 jobs, managing a warehouse by day and cleaning offices at night. Her mother had turned a tiny corner store into a thriving neighborhood market through sheer force of will and 18-hour days. "Did I ever tell you why I chose to teach at Roosevelt?" Ms. Chen asked, breaking the silence. "I had offers from private schools in Beverly Hills, tech companies in Silicon Valley, places with fancy labs and unlimited budgets." She gestured at the school building, paint peeling from its walls. "But I chose Roosevelt because I believe the next great innovation, the idea that could change everything, isn't going to come from some perfectly funded lab. It's going to come from someone who understands the real problems people face every day, someone like you, Maria." The afternoon sun was beginning to fade when Maria finally left school, her mind still churning with possibilities and doubts. The walk to her family's store took her through streets she'd known all her life. She passed Mr. Garcia's auto repair shop, where old cars waited for new lives, past Mrs. Kim's alterations business, where she turned second-hand clothes into Sunday best, past the community center where her mother had taken English classes at night, determined to run her own business one day. Every storefront, every apartment building, every face she passed told a story of adaptation and determination. These were people who knew how to make things work, how to find solutions where others saw only problems. Wasn't that exactly what innovation was supposed to be about? The bell above the door chimed as Maria entered Rodriguez Family Market. Her mother was at the register chatting with Mrs. Peterson, their oldest customer. The store had evolved over the years, adapting to the neighborhood's changing needs. Solar-powered fans now helped keep the produce fresh, her father's idea, after their 3rd power outage last summer. LED lights reduced their electricity bill. Small changes, but they added up. "Mama," Maria said later that evening after the store had closed and they were preparing dinner in their small apartment above the shop, "Ms. Chen wants me to speak at the Q&A with Elon Musk." Elena Rodriguez paused her cooking, studying her daughter's face with knowing eyes. "And you're afraid?" Maria nodded, looking down at her hands. "What if I make a fool of myself? What if my English isn't good enough? What if my ideas are stupid?" Her mother wiped her hands on her apron and sat down at the table. "Mija, do you remember when we first opened the store? My English was much worse than yours is now, but people were patient. They listened. Because what I had to offer, good food, fair prices, a clean store, that mattered more than perfect words. Carlos Rodriguez, just home from his warehouse shift and preparing to leave for his night job, joined them at the table. "Your mother is right," he said, his voice tired but proud. "We didn't come to this country for you to hide your light. If you have something to say, say it. The right people will listen." That night, Maria stayed up late reviewing her designs by the light of her desk lamp. On her wall hung a collage of newspaper clippings about renewable energy innovations, environmental justice initiatives, and several articles about Elon Musk and Tesla. But mixed among them were photos of her community, the small businesses, the families, the crowded apartment buildings with barely enough roof space for satellite dishes, let alone solar panels. She thought about Ms. Chen, who could have taken a high-paying job in Silicon Valley but chose to teach at Roosevelt High instead, about her parents' sacrifices and unwavering belief in her potential, about all the brilliant ideas that might never be heard because someone was too afraid to speak up. Opening her notebook to a fresh page, Maria began to write. If she was going to speak to Elon Musk, she would make it count, not just for herself, but for her community. For every student in every underfunded school who had ever dreamed of changing the world. The next morning, as she helped her father open the store before school, she noticed something she'd never paid attention to before. The morning sun hit the building's west wall at a perfect angle, illuminating the faded brick facade. Maria pulled out her notebook and began sketching. Maybe this visit would be just another photo opportunity for a billionaire. But maybe, just maybe, it was something more. An opportunity to turn walls into windows, limitations into possibilities. She had 1 week to prepare, one chance to speak up, and one idea that might just change everything. The weekend before Musk's visit brought unexpected challenges to the Rodriguez family. On Saturday morning, the store's aging refrigeration system finally gave out, threatening to spoil thousands of dollars worth of inventory. Maria watched her parents' faces tighten with worry as they calculated the cost of repairs against their thin margins. "We could try the solar-powered cooling system I designed," Maria suggested hesitantly, pulling out her notebook. "The one I've been working on for the science fair?" Her father studied her diagrams with tired eyes. "Mija, we don't have money for experiments right now." "But that's exactly why I designed it this way," Maria insisted, flipping to her cost analysis pages. "See? We can build it using parts from Mr. Garcia's auto shop and that recycling center on Vermont Avenue. The only new components we'd need are the basic solar cells, and those have gotten cheaper." To her surprise, her father didn't immediately dismiss the idea. Instead, he called Mr. Garcia, who arrived within the hour, wiping grease from his hands as he examined Maria's designs. "The girl's onto something," he declared. "I've got most of these parts in my shop. Been saving them for something worthwhile." What followed was a community effort that would later become central to Maria's presentation. Mr. Garcia brought the parts. Mrs. Kim's son, who studied engineering at community college, helped with the wiring. Even old Mr. Thompson, the retired teacher who'd been skeptical about Musk's visit, contributed his expertise from years of teaching physics. By Sunday evening, the store had a working hybrid cooling system that reduced their electricity consumption by 60%. It wasn't pretty. The solar panels were mismatched and the conversion unit was housed in a modified tool cabinet, but it worked. "Sometimes the best solutions aren't the prettiest," Mr. Garcia said, patting the cabinet, "but they get the job done." Maria stayed up late documenting everything. The parts they'd used, the modifications they'd made, the cost savings they'd achieved. This wasn't just theory anymore. It was practical innovation born of necessity. Monday morning brought nervous energy to Roosevelt High. The maintenance staff had spent the weekend painting over graffiti and fixing broken windows. New posters about science and innovation appeared on walls that hadn't seen fresh decorations in years. In Ms. Chen's classroom, Maria noticed small changes too. The periodic table had been replaced with a new one. The ancient globe that had been missing Australia had disappeared. Even the perpetually sticky lab tables gleamed with fresh polish. "They're trying to hide who we really are," Diana commented during lunch, "like we need to pretend to be something we're not to be worth his time." Maria thought about her store's cooling system, with its mismatched parts and improvised solutions. "Maybe we need to show him exactly who we are," she said slowly. "Because that's our strength." After school, Ms. Chen kept Maria behind. "The principal wants to prep the students who'll be speaking at the Q&A, she said. "They want to make sure everyone stays on appropriate topics." "You mean they want us to make the school look good?" Maria translated. Ms. Chen sighed. "They want to maximize this opportunity. But Maria, I think you should talk about your real work. The solutions you've developed for real problems, that's what will make an impact." That evening, Maria walked home through her neighborhood with new eyes. She passed apartment buildings where families shared single-room units, their windows crowded, with makeshift air conditioning solutions. She saw small businesses like her parents, struggling to keep up with rising energy costs. Every challenge represented an opportunity for innovation. Not the sleek, expensive kind that made headlines, but the practical kind that changed lives. At home, she found her mother teaching English to Mrs. Park from the Korean restaurant next door, while her father helped Miguel with his math homework. The store's new cooling system hummed quietly in the background, a testament to what their community could accomplish together. Maria spread her notebooks across the kitchen table, surrounded by the sounds of her family and neighbors. Her presentation was taking shape, but not in the way Principal Washington might have hoped. She wasn't going to pretend to be from a different world. She was going to show Elon Musk exactly what innovation looked like in South LA. "What are you going to say to him?" Miguel asked, peering over her shoulder. Maria smiled, thinking of the mismatched solar panels on their store roof, of Mr. Garcia's salvaged parts, of Mrs. Kim's son's careful wiring. "I'm going to show him that sometimes the best innovations don't come from fancy labs," she said. "They come from people who have no choice but to find a better way." As the week progressed, word spread about Maria's cooling system. Other small business owners stopped by to see it, asking questions about cost and implementation. Mr. Garcia started collecting more parts. Mrs. Kim's son offered to help with installations. What had started as a solution to one family's problem was becoming something bigger. Principal Washington's preparation sessions for the Q&A continued, but Maria attended only one. She couldn't bring herself to practice the scripted questions about career goals and inspiration. Her community had given her something more important to discuss. The night before Musk's visit, Maria couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, looking out over the neighborhood she'd called home all her life. Solar-powered security lights illuminated the streets, another community innovation after budget cuts reduced police patrols. In the distance, the city's wealthy neighborhoods glowed with abundant electricity, while here, people found ways to do more with less. Tomorrow, she would have her chance to speak, not just for herself, but for every community that had been overlooked in the rush toward a greener future. She would show one of the world's greatest innovators that sometimes the most powerful solutions come from the places you least expect. Maria touched the worn notebook on her desk, her constant companion, through years of observations, calculations, and dreams. Tomorrow its pages would tell a story of innovation born of necessity, of community-driven solutions, of the kind of practical creativity that could only come from understanding the real challenges people faced every day. She was ready. The morning of Elon Musk's visit dawned with an unusual buzz in South Los Angeles. News vans lined Roosevelt High's perimeter, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical sunflowers. Security personnel in dark suits and earpieces, a stark contrast to the school's usual campus monitors, patrolled the grounds with practiced efficiency. Maria arrived 2 hours early, slipping through the service entrance she usually used for her morning study sessions. The familiar corridor felt different today, freshly painted and smelling of industrial cleaner rather than its usual mix of floor wax and teenage dreams. In Ms. Chen's classroom, Even the ancient Bunsen burners had been polished to a dull shine. "You're here early," Ms. Chen said, not looking up from her meticulous arrangement of demonstration materials. Her hands trembled slightly as she aligned molecular models with mathematical precision. "Though I should have expected it." "Couldn't sleep," Maria admitted, pulling out her notebook. The pages were worn from constant review, corners dog-eared at crucial points. "I kept thinking about what would happen if I forgot everything, or if my English suddenly disappeared, or if—" "Maria," Ms. Chen interrupted, finally looking up. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much either. "Do you remember what you told Mr. Garcia when he said the recycled solar panels wouldn't look professional enough?" "I told him that function matters more than appearance," Maria replied, managing a small smile. "That sometimes the best solutions don't come in pretty packages." "Exactly. And today?" Ms. Chen was interrupted by a burst of static from the intercom, followed by Principal Washington's voice, more formal than anyone had ever heard it. "All faculty report to the main office immediately for final briefing. I repeat, all faculty to the main office." Ms. Chen squeezed Maria's shoulder before heading out. "Remember who you are, Maria. That's all that matters today." Left alone in the classroom, Maria walked to the window. The morning sun cast long shadows across the schoolyard, where a small army of maintenance workers made final preparations. A gleaming Tesla Model S pulled into the reserved parking space. Principal Washington's arrival. Next to it, Ms. Chen's 15-year-old Civic looked like a testament to perseverance. Students began arriving in waves, many dressed in their best clothes, as if for school pictures. Diana appeared wearing a crisp white blouse Maria had never seen before. "Mom stayed up all night ironing it," Diana explained, smoothing invisible wrinkles. "She said if I'm going to meet a billionaire, I should look like I could be one." She studied Maria's familiar navy sweater and practical skirt. "You're not changing?" Maria shook her head. "This is who we are, Diana. That's what I want him to see." The morning crawled by in a blur of security checks and last-minute preparations. During second period, a team of Tesla representatives arrived to inspect the route Musk would take through the school. They paused in the science lab, frowning at the old equipment. "We can have newer models brought in," one suggested, eyeing the worn microscopes. "These still work fine," Ms. Chen replied firmly, having returned from the briefing. "Our students have won 3 regional science fairs using them." By lunch, the tension was palpable. The cafeteria buzzed with nervous energy as students rehearsed what they'd say if given the chance to speak to Musk. Maria sat with her lunch untouched, reviewing her presentation one last time. Her father had slipped a note into her lunchbox. "Tu voz es tu poder." Your voice is your power. The afternoon schedule had been modified to accommodate the visit. Students chosen for the Q&A session, including Maria, were excused from their last 2 classes to prepare in the auditorium. Principal Washington paced the stage, adjusting his tie compulsively. "Remember," he addressed the selected students, "this is an opportunity to showcase Roosevelt High's potential. Keep your questions positive, forward-looking, and—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Appropriate." Maria felt her stomach tighten. Her presentation about community-based solar solutions and recycled materials suddenly seemed very inappropriate indeed. At precisely 2:30 p.m., a motorcade of black SUVs and Tesla vehicles pulled into the school's circular driveway. The hallways fell silent as Elon Musk emerged, dressed casually in a dark jacket and jeans. He looked younger in person than in photos, more human somehow. The carefully choreographed tour began. Musk was led through selected classrooms, where prearranged demonstrations awaited. Students who had been coached on exactly what to say performed their roles perfectly. Everything was going according to plan, until they reached Ms. Chen's classroom. "And here we have our advanced science program," Principal Washington began. But Musk had already noticed the hybrid solar cooling system prototype Maria had brought from the store. It sat on a back table, conspicuously unpolished among the carefully arranged displays. "What's this?" he asked, walking directly to it, ignoring the prepared presentation materials. Principal Washington faltered. This wasn't part of the schedule. Before he could redirect attention, Maria found herself speaking. "It's a modified solar cooling system, sir," she said, her voice quieter than she'd intended but steady. "We built it for our family store when the regular refrigeration broke down." Musk picked up the control unit, studying the improvised casing made from repurposed computer parts. "We? The community," Maria continued, gaining confidence. "Mr. Garcia from the auto shop provided parts. Mrs. Kim's son helped with wiring. And Maria," Principal Washington interrupted, "Mr. Musk has a very tight schedule." But Musk was already examining the system's specifications written in Maria's neat hand. "These efficiency ratings, they're better than some commercial units. How did you achieve that?" For the next 10 minutes, Maria explained the system's design, how it adapted to limited space requirements, and how it used recycled materials to reduce costs. She showed him her notebook, filled with iterations and improvements based on real-world testing. "This is exactly what we need," Musk said finally, looking up from the notebook. "Not just technical innovation, but practical implementation that considers real-world constraints." He turned to Principal Washington. "I'd like to hear more about this during the Q&A." The auditorium was packed for the Q&A session. Every student, teacher, and administrator sat in perfect attention as Musk took the stage. The selected students asked their prepared questions about entrepreneurship, career paths, and the future of technology. Then it was Maria's turn. She walked to the microphone, her notebook clutched tightly. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but she could feel Ms. Chen's encouraging presence, could imagine her parents' proud faces. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice stronger than she expected, "everyone talks about the future of sustainable energy, but in communities like ours we need solutions now. Not in 10 years, not when prices come down, but today." She opened her notebook, sharing not just her designs but the stories behind them. The small businesses struggling with energy costs, the families choosing between electricity and groceries, the innovative solutions born of necessity. "We don't need fancy labs or expensive equipment," she continued. "We need practical innovations that work in the real world, with the resources we actually have. Because climate change isn't waiting for perfect solutions, and neither are we." The auditorium was silent when she finished. Musk stood up, walked to the microphone. "This," he said, "is exactly why I came here today. Not to see polished presentations or hear practiced questions, but to find real innovation. Innovation that solves real problems." He turned to Maria. "Would you be interested in developing this further, with proper funding and support?" The rest of the afternoon passed in a whirlwind. Musk's team arranged meetings with Tesla's R&D department. Principal Washington beamed as though he'd planned it all along. News cameras captured everything. But for Maria, the most important moment came later, after the motorcade had departed and the excitement had died down. She walked home through her neighborhood, past Mr. Garcia's auto shop where he was already working on another solar unit, past Mrs. Kim's store, where her son was explaining the system to other business owners. At the Rodriguez family market, her parents waited with tears of pride. The store's solar cooling system hummed quietly, proof that sometimes the best innovations come from the most unexpected places. "Tu voz es tu poder," her father repeated, hugging her tightly. Maria nodded, understanding now what those words truly meant. Her voice wasn't just her power. It was her community's power, and finally someone with the resources to make a difference had heard it. That evening, as the sun set over South Los Angeles, Maria sat at her desk, opening her notebook to a fresh page. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight, she allowed herself to dream bigger than she ever had before, not just for herself but for every community that had ever been told to wait for change to come to them. Sometimes, she realized, change doesn't come to you. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, one recycled part at a time. The morning after Musk's visit, Maria woke to find her phone flooded with notifications. Local news outlets had picked up the story, their headlines ranging from South LA, "Student impresses tech mogul," to "Community innovation catches Tesla's eye." But it was the message from Tesla's head of research and development that made her hands shake. Meeting scheduled for Thursday, 2 p.m. Car will pick you up from school. Mija, come see this, her mother called from the store below. Maria rushed downstairs to find a small crowd gathered around their solar cooling system. Mr. Garcia was there, explaining the mechanics to a group of small business owners from the neighborhood. Mrs. Kim was taking notes while her son Kevin drew diagrams on a spare piece of cardboard. 3 more stores want to install the system, her father said proudly. Mr. Garcia thinks we can build them even better now that we know what works. Maria was about to respond when Ms. Chen appeared at the store entrance, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Maria, we need to talk, she said, holding up her tablet. Have you seen what's happening online? Maria followed Ms. Chen to a quiet corner of the store. The tablet showed dozens of social media posts about her presentation, but what caught her attention was a thread from a major energy corporation, questioning the safety and legality of unauthorized modifications to power systems. They're trying to discredit your work before it can gain traction, Ms. Chen explained, her voice low. This is what happens when you challenge the status quo. But everything we did is up to code, Maria protested. Kevin made sure of it. We even had the city inspector check it. I know that, and you know that, but big companies don't like small solutions they can't control. Ms. Chen's expression softened. Are you ready for this fight, Maria? Because it's going to be one. Before Maria could answer, Diana burst into the store waving her phone excitedly. You're trending, and not just locally, people are sharing your story across the country. Look at these comments from other communities trying to solve the same problems. The next few days became a blur of activity. Local reporters showed up, hoping to interview the Tesla girl, as some had dubbed her. Community members dropped by to share their own innovation stories. Even Principal Washington made an appearance, though he seemed more interested in discussing potential funding opportunities than the actual technology. Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to the store. Dr. Robert Chang, Tesla's head of R&D, arrived unannounced in a Model X, drawing a small crowd of onlookers. I hope you don't mind the surprise visit, he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I wanted to see your setup before tomorrow's meeting. His eyes scanned the modified cooling system with professional interest. Tell me about your testing process. For the next 2 hours, Maria walked Dr. Chang through every aspect of the system. She showed him her notebook filled with daily performance data, explained how they'd solved various challenges, and demonstrated the user-friendly controls they'd designed for non-technical operators. Most impressive, Dr. Chang murmured, making notes on his tablet. But tell me, why didn't you patent any of this? Maria glanced around the store at Mr. Garcia showing another business owner the maintenance basics, at Kevin explaining the wiring to a curious teenager. Because it's not just mine to patent. This is community technology. We all contributed, we all problem-solved together. It wouldn't be right to lock that up. Dr. Chang's expression was unreadable. That's an unusual perspective in our industry. Maybe. That's why your industry solutions don't always work for communities like ours, Maria replied, then immediately worried she'd been too bold. But Dr. Chang smiled. Ms. Rodriguez, I think tomorrow's meeting will be very interesting indeed. That evening, the Rodriguez family hosted an impromptu community meeting in their store. The usual chairs from the back room had been supplemented with milk crates and borrowed folding chairs from Mrs. Kim's restaurant. The crowd included small business owners, local handymen, students, and even a few skeptical energy company representatives. They're saying what we're doing isn't safe. Mr. Garcia addressed the group, his weathered face serious. That we need to wait for approved solutions. Well, I've been working with electronics for 40 years, and I'm telling you this system is as safe as anything they're selling. Safer, maybe, because we actually care about getting it right. Kevin stood up, holding printouts of safety regulations. Everything we've done meets or exceeds code requirements. We've documented every step, every test, every modification. They're not worried about safety. They're worried about control. The meeting continued late into the night with community members sharing ideas, concerns, and possible solutions. Maria took notes constantly, filling pages with suggestions for improvements and applications she hadn't considered before. "See what? You've started?" Diana whispered, watching the animated discussions around them. "This isn't just about cooling systems anymore. It's about showing people they don't have to wait for someone else to solve their problems." Thursday morning at Roosevelt High was surreal. Students who had never spoken to Maria before stopped to wish her luck. Teachers shared encouraging words between classes. Even the cafeteria ladies gave her extra portions at lunch. Ms. Chen found her in the science lab during break, reviewing her presentation materials one last time. "Whatever happens in that meeting," she said, sitting beside Maria, "you've already succeeded. You've shown these kids that their ideas matter, that innovation can come from anywhere." The Tesla car arrived precisely at 2 p.m. The driver, a young woman named Sarah, smiled warmly as she opened the door. "Dr. Chang speaks very highly of your work," she said as they pulled away from the school. "That's not something that happens often." The drive to Tesla's regional headquarters took 45 minutes, during which Maria watched the city landscape change from familiar neighborhood stores to gleaming corporate buildings. The contrast wasn't lost on her. This was the divide her innovation was trying to bridge. The Tesla building was all glass and steel, a monument to modern technology. In the lobby, a massive screen displayed real-time data about solar energy usage across the country. Maria noticed that communities like hers were conspicuously dark on the map. Dr. Chang met her personally, leading her to a conference room where several executives and engineers waited. The room fell silent as she entered, all eyes on the 16-year-old girl in her simple school uniform. "Ms. Rodriguez," Dr. Chang began, "we've reviewed your design extensively. What interests us isn't just the technical innovation, though that's impressive. It's your approach to implementation. We'd like to discuss a partnership." For the next 2 hours, Maria presented her ideas to some of the top minds in sustainable energy. She showed them not just the technical specifications, but the real-world impact. Photos of small businesses reducing their energy costs, data on community adoption rates, testimonials from users. "The beauty of this system," she explained, pointing to her cost analysis, "is that it's scalable and adaptable. Each community can modify it based on their specific needs and resources. It's not one size fits all, it's one size transforms." The questions came rapid fire after her presentation. Some were technical, others focused on implementation challenges. But it was the last question from a senior executive that caught her off guard. "Why should Tesla invest in this, rather than continuing with our current development path?" Maria took a deep breath, remembering her father's words. "Tu voz es tu poder." "Because your current path leaves too many people behind," she said firmly. "You're creating amazing technology, but it's only reaching a fraction of the population. Our solution isn't just about technology. It's about accessibility, about community empowerment, about showing people they can be part of the solution instead of waiting for it to trickle down to them." The room was silent for a moment. Then Dr. Chang smiled. "That's exactly what Mr. Musk said you'd say." He slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to launch a pilot program, with you as lead community liaison. Full funding for development and implementation in 50 communities across the country, starting with South LA. Maria's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The numbers made her dizzy. This was more money than she'd ever imagined, but it was the project structure that brought tears to her eyes. The program would train local technicians, employ community members, and keep the technology open source. "This isn't charity," Dr. Chang emphasized. "This is investment in the future of sustainable energy. You've shown us a blind spot in our approach, Ms. Rodriguez. Now we'd like you to help us fix it." The sun was setting when the Tesla car dropped, her back at the store. The community meeting was still going strong, with new faces joining the regulars. Maria walked in to find them discussing plans for a training program at the community center. "Well?" her father asked, the single word carrying all his hopes and fears. Maria smiled, holding up the folder. "They want us to show them how it's done." The cheer that went up could probably be heard across South LA. But for Maria, The real victory wasn't in the contract or the funding. It was in watching her community realize that their solutions mattered, that their innovations could change the world. That night, she added one more entry to her notebook. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest questions. You just have to be brave enough to ask them. The transformation of South Los Angeles began on a sunny Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Maria's meeting at Tesla. The community center's main hall, usually reserved for quinceañeras and local fundraisers, had been converted into a makeshift command center. Folding tables groaned under the weight of laptops, technical drawings, and Mrs. Rodriguez's homemade tamales, brain fuel for the growing team of community innovators. Okay, let's review the pilot program timeline, Maria said, standing before a wall-sized map of the neighborhood. Red pins marked the first 20 locations scheduled for solar installations, each representing a small business or community building that had volunteered to be part of the initial rollout. Dr. Chang sat in the back, observing with quiet approval as Maria coordinated with various community leaders. The Tesla executive had insisted on being personally involved in the program's launch, recognizing that this grassroots approach to sustainable energy was unlike anything his company had attempted before. We've divided the neighborhood into 5 zones, Kevin explained, pointing to color-coded sections of the map. Each zone has a team leader who knows the area and the people. Mr. Garcia heads up the technical training, while my engineering students from the community college handle the theoretical aspects. And what about the regulatory challenges? Dr. Chang asked, voicing the concern that had been keeping Tesla's legal team up at night. We're still getting pushback from traditional energy providers. Maria stepped forward, her confidence growing with each day in her new role. We've partnered with the Environmental Justice Legal Clinic at UCLA. They're helping us navigate the permits and ensuring everything meets or exceeds current regulations. She pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. Actually, our community-based approach has revealed some interesting gaps in existing energy policies. The meeting continued as community members filtered in and out, each bringing updates from their respective areas of responsibility. Mrs. Kim had organized a group of small business owners to document their current energy costs, creating a baseline for measuring the program's impact. Mr. Thompson, the retired physics teacher, had developed a simplified training manual that made the technical aspects accessible to everyone, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the morning progressed, Diana burst into the community center, her face flushed with anger. "They're at it again," she announced, holding up her phone. The screen showed a sponsored post from Energy Corp, one of the largest traditional power companies in the region. Community safety alert, the post read. Beware of unauthorized energy modifications that could put your family at risk. Trust only licensed providers for your power needs. Maria felt her stomach tighten, but Dr. Chang's response surprised her. Actually, he said, standing up, this might be exactly what we needed. He turned to Maria. How would you feel about giving a public demonstration? The next few days became a whirlwind of preparation. Tesla's media team worked with local organizers to plan an event that would showcase the community's innovation while addressing safety concerns head-on. The Rodriguez family market would serve as ground zero, its successful solar cooling system, the centerpiece of the demonstration. We're not just showing them the technology, Maria explained during a planning session. We're showing them our process, our safety protocols, our community involvement. This isn't about one solution. It's about teaching people how to solve their own problems. The event was scheduled for Saturday morning. As dawn broke over South LA, Maria stood in front of her family's store, watching the transformation. Local artists had painted a vibrant mural celebrating community innovation on the building's west wall, the same wall that had inspired her original vertical solar design. Food vendors set up stalls, their generators replaced by portable solar units designed by Kevin and his engineering students. News vans began arriving early, attracted by the David versus Goliath narrative of a teenage innovator challenging big energy companies. But what they found wasn't just a story about technology. It was a story about community empowerment. Look at this, Diana whispered, pointing to the growing crowd. Among the local residents and curious onlookers, Maria spotted representatives from other communities facing similar challenges. They had come from East LA, from Oakland, from Phoenix, all hoping to learn how one neighborhood had started its own energy revolution. At precisely 10 a.m., Maria took the podium set up in front of the store. Behind her, screens displayed real-time data from the solar cooling system and other pilot installations around the neighborhood. Dr. Chang stood nearby, ready to provide technical validation. But this was Maria's moment. A lot of people have asked why we didn't wait for the proper authorities to solve our energy problems, she began, her voice clear and confident. The answer is simple. We couldn't afford to wait. Climate change isn't waiting. Rising energy costs aren't waiting. Our communities need solutions now. She walked the audience through the development process from initial concept to community implementation. Mr. Garcia demonstrated the safety features they'd incorporated. Kevin explained the training program they'd developed. Local business owners shared their experiences with the system. But the most important thing we've created isn't the technology, Maria continued. It's the framework for community-driven innovation. Every neighborhood has its own challenges, its own resources, its own expertise. We're not here to sell you a product. We're here to show you how to create solutions that work for your community. The THAR demonstration portion of the event proved particularly powerful. Live cameras followed as Maria and her team conducted safety tests, showed the monitoring systems they'd developed, and explained how they'd exceeded standard regulatory requirements. This isn't about bypassing safety, she emphasized. It's about making safety accessible and understandable to everyone. When people understand how something works, they can maintain it properly and improve it responsibly. Energy Corp's representatives watched from the back of the crowd, their expressions growing increasingly concerned as they realized their scare tactics had backfired. Instead of frightening people away from community-based solutions, they'd provided a platform for demonstrating their effectiveness. During the Q&A session, a woman from Phoenix stood up. Our neighborhood has been trying to get solar installations for years, but the costs are prohibitive. How can we implement something like this? Maria smiled. That's exactly why we're keeping this open source. Everything we've learned, every solution we've developed, every mistake we've made and fixed, it's all documented and available. But more than that, we're creating a network of community innovators who can support each other. Dr. Chang took the microphone next, announcing Tesla's commitment to expanding the program. What Maria and her community have shown us is that innovation doesn't just come from corporate labs. Sometimes the best solutions come from the people who understand the problems most intimately. As the formal presentation ended, the event transformed into a community celebration and networking session. Food vendors served solar-cooked meals, local bands played through solar-powered amplifiers, and impromptu technical discussions broke out everywhere. Maria found herself moving from group to group, connecting people with similar challenges, facilitating discussions about implementation in different contexts. She watched as Mr. Garcia exchanged contact information with a mechanic from Oakland, who had ideas about improving the cooling system's efficiency. Mrs. Kim was deep in conversation with business owners from East LA about creating a bulk purchasing program for solar components. You've started something remarkable, Ms. Chen said, finding Maria during a quiet moment. This isn't just about solar power anymore. You're showing people how to take control of their own futures. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. Representatives from the mayor's office arrived, interested in scaling the program citywide. Environmental justice organizations offered support and resources. Even some former skeptics from traditional energy companies approached with partnership proposals. But for Maria, the most meaningful moment came when a group of young students from her school asked for her advice. We have ideas too, a freshman girl said shyly, but we didn't think anyone would listen. That's how I felt, Maria admitted. But look around. When you have a solution that really helps people, they don't just listen, they become part of it. That's the real power of community innovation. As the sun set and the crowd began to thin, Maria sat with her family in their store, surrounded by the remnants of the day's celebration. Her father's eyes were bright with pride as he reviewed the list of communities interested in implementing their program. When we came to this country, he said softly, we dreamed of giving you opportunities. But you've done more than take opportunities. You've created them for others. Diana, who had been analyzing social media responses to the event, looked up from her laptop. It's going viral, she announced. But not just the usual tech stuff. People are sharing stories about their own community innovations, asking how they can get involved. You've started a movement, Maria. Dr. Chang, who had stayed to help with cleanup, joined them. The board is impressed with today's demonstration, he said. They want to fast-track the expansion to other communities, but they also understand now why it needs to remain community-driven. You've shown us a new way of thinking about innovation and implementation. Maria opened her notebook, no longer just a collection of technical drawings, but a blueprint for community empowerment. We need to document everything from today, she said. Not just the technical successes, but the connections made, the questions asked, the problems identified. Every community will have its own challenges, but they can learn from our experience. As she wrote, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a simple solution for a broken cooling system to a movement that was reshaping how communities approached sustainable energy. It hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but they had proven something important. When people are given the tools and knowledge to solve their own problems, innovation becomes a force for real change. Tomorrow, she said, looking up at the diverse group gathered in her family's store. We start working on phase 2. There are still so many problems to solve. So many communities waiting for solutions. But now we know how to do it. Together. The store's solar cooling system hummed quietly in the background. A reminder that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest solutions. Outside, the mural caught the last rays of sunlight, its colors promising a brighter future. Not just for South LA, but for every community ready to embrace the power of collective innovation. The success of the demonstration day sparked a new set of challenges that no one had fully anticipated. By Monday morning, Maria's inbox was flooded with requests from communities across the country. The simple command center at the community center needed to evolve rapidly. We need a better system for handling all these inquiries, Diana said, helping Maria sort through hundreds of emails. And we need to figure out how to scale our training program without losing the personal touch that makes it work. Tesla assigned a full-time team to support the initiative, but Dr. Chang insisted on maintaining the community-led approach that had made it successful. Our role is to facilitate, not dictate, he reminded his corporate team during their first strategic planning session. The next phase of development brought unexpected allies. Local technical schools offered their facilities for training programs. Environmental justice groups provided legal and policy support. Even some former critics from traditional energy companies began reaching out, recognizing the potential of community-based innovation. But how do we maintain quality control as we expand? Mr. Garcia asked during an evening strategy session. Each community needs to adapt the technology to their specific needs, but we also need to ensure safety standards are met. Maria had been thinking about this challenge. She pulled out her notebook, now accompanied by a tablet provided by Tesla, and shared her latest idea. What if we created a peer review system? Each community that successfully implements the program becomes part of a network that helps evaluate and support new implementations. The concept quickly evolved into what they called the Community Innovation Network, a structure that combined technical expertise with local knowledge and experience. Each new community would be paired with successful implementers from similar environments, creating a web of mutual support and accountability. It's like creating a new kind of infrastructure, Ms. Chen observed. Not just physical infrastructure for energy, but social infrastructure for innovation. The impact began to show in unexpected ways. Local schools reported increased interest in STEM subjects. Small businesses started exploring other areas for innovation. Community members who had never considered themselves technical discovered hidden talents through the training programs. 1 month after the demonstration, Maria stood before the city council, presenting the program's initial results. The data was compelling. Participating businesses had reduced their energy costs by an average of 40%. Employment opportunities in green technology had increased. Community engagement in environmental issues had soared. But it was the personal stories that really captured the council's attention. Mrs. Kim spoke about how the money saved on energy costs had allowed her to hire 2 new employees. Mr. Garcia described how the training program had given his nephew a new career path in sustainable technology. These weren't just statistics. They were real changes in people's lives. The council meeting marked a turning point. With city support now secured, the program could expand beyond their initial pilot area. But with growth came new responsibilities and challenges. We need to ensure this doesn't become just another top-down program, Maria insisted during a planning meeting with city officials. The community has to remain at the center of every decision. As the sun set on another long day of meetings and planning sessions, Maria sat in her family store, updating her original notebook. Around her, the business hummed with its usual activity, but now with an undercurrent of change. Solar-powered, fans kept the air moving efficiently. LED lights illuminated the aisles. The cooling system that had started it all operated silently in the background. Her father joined her, placing a cup of chamomile tea at her elbow. "You know," he said, looking around the store, "when we first opened this place, we just wanted to provide for our family. We never imagined it would become a symbol of something bigger." Maria smiled, thinking about how far they'd come from that first desperate attempt to save their inventory with a makeshift cooling system. "Sometimes the biggest dreams start with the smallest necessities," she replied, echoing words she'd heard him say many times before. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The next day would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new problems to solve. But now they had something they hadn't had before. A proven model for community-driven innovation and a network of people ready to support each other in creating change. The revolution that had started in South LA was just beginning, and its power source wasn't just solar energy. It was the combined energy of communities working together to build a better future, one innovation at a time. The first signs of serious opposition came 3 months into the program's expansion. Maria was reviewing implementation plans with the Community Innovation Network when her phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Chang. "Turn on Channel 7 News. Now." The television in the community center's meeting room flickered to life, showing a press conference outside Energy Corp's downtown headquarters. The company's CEO, Richard Maxwell, stood at a podium, his expression grave. "While we applaud young innovators, we must address serious concerns about unauthorized energy modifications in our communities," Maxwell announced. "Our investigation has revealed potential safety hazards and code violations in these amateur installations. We're calling for an immediate suspension of all non-certified energy projects." The room fell silent. 24 community leaders from across the city, gathered for their weekly coordination meeting, watched as Maxwell continued his carefully orchestrated attack on their program. "This isn't just about safety," Diana whispered, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard as she tracked social media reactions. "They're scared because we're actually succeeding." Maria's phone rang almost immediately. Dr. Chang again. "Don't respond publicly yet," he advised. "We need to coordinate our approach. I'm on my way with our legal team." Within an hour, the community center had transformed into a crisis management headquarters. Tesla's lawyers huddled with representatives from the Environmental Justice Legal Clinic, while community leaders shared documentation of their safety protocols and certification processes. "They're trying to paint us as amateurs," Mr. Garcia said, spreading out their detailed safety records. "But every installation has been inspected and certified. We've got better documentation than most corporate projects." Maria sat at her usual spot, surrounded by notebooks and tablets, trying to make sense of the situation. The past 3 months had seen their program expand to 30 communities across Los Angeles County. They'd trained over 200 local technicians, created dozens of green jobs, and helped countless small businesses reduce their energy costs. How had that success become a threat? It's not just Energy Corp, Ms. Chen explained, joining Maria, with a stack of research papers. Look at these patterns. Similar opposition is emerging in every city where community-based energy programs are gaining traction. Diana projected a map onto the wall, showing red dots where corporate pushback had begun. They're coordinating their efforts. Social media, campaigns, local news stories, lobby groups, all pushing the same message about safety concerns and unauthorized modifications. Dr. Chang arrived as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the community center's windows. He looked tired but determined. The board is fully behind us, he announced. Tesla's official statement will emphasize the rigorous safety standards and professional oversight of our community partnership program. But Maria had been thinking about a different approach. We shouldn't just defend ourselves, she said, standing up. We need to show people the truth, not through press releases but through real demonstrations. She outlined her plan. A series of open houses across all participating communities, inviting the public, media, and even energy company representatives to see their installations firsthand. They would showcase not just the technology but the entire process, from training to implementation to monitoring. Transparency is our strongest weapon, she argued. Let them see exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. The idea quickly gained support, but it also revealed the scale of their challenge. Coordinating open houses across 30 communities would require incredible organization. Plus, they needed to ensure every site was operating at peak efficiency and every team was prepared for public scrutiny. We have 2 weeks before Energy Corp's proposed regulations go before the City Council, Dr. Chang said. That's our window. The next few days became a blur of activity. Maria's mother set up a makeshift kitchen in the community center, feeding the volunteers who worked late into the night. Her father's store became a secondary command center, its back room filled with maps and planning documents. Kevin and his engineering students developed a standardized presentation format that each community could customize. Mr. Garcia led refresher training sessions for all installation teams. Mrs. Kim organized a network of small business owners to share their experiences with the program. But their opponents weren't sitting idle. Energy Corp launched a sophisticated media campaign, featuring experts who questioned the safety of community-based energy solutions. Anonymous comments appeared on local news sites, sharing false stories about failed installations and dangerous malfunctions. They're trying to scare people, Diana observed, tracking the online campaigns. But they're also giving us free publicity. Every attack makes more people curious about what we're really doing. Maria found unexpected support from her classmates at Roosevelt High. The school's computer club offered to help manage social media responses. The art department designed infographics explaining their safety protocols. Even the drama club got involved, helping community presenters prepare for public speaking. A week before the open houses, Maria received a surprising email from Sarah Chen, Ms. Chen's younger sister who worked in Silicon Valley. Your story reached us here, she wrote. Several tech companies are interested in supporting community-based innovation. Would you be willing to share your model? The message sparked an idea. What if we live-streamed the open houses, Maria suggested during their evening strategy session? Not just to counter Energy Corp's claims, but to show other communities how they can implement similar programs. The suggestion transformed their approach. Instead of 30 separate events, they would create an interconnected showcase of community innovation. Each location would highlight different aspects of the program, from technical training to economic impacts to environmental benefits. Dr. Chang brought in Tesla's media team to handle the technical aspects of the live stream, but insisted that community members remain the primary presenters. This has to stay authentic, he emphasized. That's what makes it powerful. The day before the open houses, Maria visited every installation site in South LA. The transformations she saw amazed her. Mr. Garcia's auto shop had become a training center for new technicians. The community center's roof hosted a solar array that powered free charging stations for electric vehicles. Small businesses displayed real-time energy savings on digital boards in their windows. But it wasn't just the physical changes that impressed her. She saw former skeptics becoming enthusiastic advocates. Teenagers who had never considered technical careers were now leading tours of their community's installations. Elderly residents were learning to monitor energy systems through user-friendly apps developed by local students. The morning of the open houses dawned clear and bright. Maria stood in front of her family's store, now featuring a new mural that combined traditional Mexican art with images of sustainable technology. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes competing with the solar panels that had become a common sight in the neighborhood. "Ready?" Diana asked, adjusting the microphone on Maria's collar. They would be broadcasting live to thousands of viewers across the country. Maria took a deep breath, thinking about how far they'd come from that first desperate attempt to save their store's inventory. Ready to show them what community power really means. The live stream began with a split-screen view of all 30 locations. In each community, local leaders prepared to share their stories. Maria watched on a monitor as faces familiar and new appeared, all part of a movement that had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. "Welcome," she began, her voice clear and confident. "Today we're going to show you something that some people think is impossible. Communities solving their own energy challenges safely and effectively. But more than that, we're going to show you how it's done, step by step, so you can do it too." Over the next 4 hours, viewers witnessed a comprehensive demonstration of community-based innovation in action. Technical experts explained safety, protocols. Small business owners shared economic impact data. Environmental scientists presented emissions reduction statistics, but most powerfully, community members told their own stories of transformation. Energy Corp's representatives attended several locations, their expressions shifting from skepticism to surprise as they witnessed the professionalism and thoroughness of the installations. By mid-afternoon, their media campaign had noticeably softened. The live stream's comment section filled with questions and expressions of interest from communities worldwide. Local news coverage, initially focused on the controversy, began highlighting the program's success stories. Even some energy industry blogs admitted that the community-based approach showed promise. But for Maria, the most significant moment came during the final segment. A group of students from another high school in South LA demonstrated an improvement they'd developed for the original solar cooling system, making it even more efficient and easier to maintain. This was never just about one solution or one community, Maria explained as the live stream concluded. "It's about creating a framework where everyone can contribute to solving our energy challenges. Because when you give communities the tools and knowledge they need, innovation becomes unstoppable." The impact of the open houses exceeded their expectations. City council members who attended became strong advocates for the program. Other cities reached out to learn about implementing similar initiatives. Even some traditional energy companies began exploring partnerships with community-based projects. That evening, as the last visitors left and the cleanup began, Maria sat with her family in their store. The solar cooling system that had started, everything hummed quietly in the background, now just one of many innovations transforming their community. "When I was your age," her father said, "I thought change could only come from those with power and money. You've shown us all a different way." Maria opened her notebook, the original one where she'd first sketched her ideas. Its pages were worn now, filled with calculations, diagrams, and notes from countless meetings. But there was still space for more ideas, more solutions, more possibilities. "We're just getting started," she said, beginning a new entry. "Every challenge we face is an opportunity to innovate, and every solution we find is a lesson we can share." Outside, the sun set on a neighborhood transformed not just by technology, but by the power of collective action and shared purpose. The revolution that had begun with one family's need had become a movement that couldn't be stopped, because it was powered by something stronger than corporate interests or political influence. The unstoppable force of communities working together to create change. The email arrived at 3 a.m., jolting Maria awake with its urgent tone. It was from a small village in rural India, where a community leader had watched the live stream and immediately recognized the potential for their own energy challenges. "Our situation is different but similar. The email read. We have abundant sunlight but no infrastructure. Your community-based approach could be exactly what we need. Can we talk? Maria sat up in bed, her mind already racing with possibilities. This wasn't the first international inquiry they'd received since the open houses, but something about this one felt different. The village's challenges represented exactly the kind of adaptation their program was designed to address. By sunrise, she had drafted a preliminary response and scheduled a video call with the village council for later that week. But first, she needed to convince her own team to take this crucial step toward global expansion. It's not just about technology transfer, she explained to Dr. Chang during their morning meeting at the community center. It's about creating a framework that can adapt to completely different cultural and economic contexts. Dr. Chang leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. This could be exactly what we need to prove the model's versatility. But it's also our biggest challenge yet. Different infrastructure, different regulations, different cultural norms. That's why it's perfect, Maria insisted, spreading out a map she'd printed. Look at these patterns. Every community we've worked with has needed to adapt our basic framework to their specific situation. This is just a larger scale of the same principle. Diana, who had been quietly researching the Indian village, joined them with her laptop. They have some advantages we didn't have, she pointed out. Strong community bonds, traditional knowledge of sustainable practices, and a local engineering college that's already expressed interest in partnering. The morning evolved into a strategy session that drew in more and more participants. Mr. Garcia brought his technical expertise, while Mrs. Kim offered insights from her experience adapting business practices across cultural boundaries. Ms. Chen arrived with research on similar international development projects, both successful and failed. The key is to maintain our core principle, Maria emphasized, writing on the whiteboard. This has to be their project, not ours. We provide the framework and support, but they drive the innovation. By afternoon, the community center buzzed with excitement about the international expansion. Local team members who had family connections in other countries began sharing stories of similar needs in their home communities. What had started as one email from India was evolving into a vision for a global network of community-based innovation hubs. The video call with the Indian Village Council was scheduled for Thursday morning, Wednesday evening their time. Maria spent the intervening days preparing, not just technically but culturally. She learned about the village's history, their current challenges, and their previous attempts at implementing sustainable energy solutions. Remember, Ms. Chen advised as they set up for the call, you're not just representing yourself anymore. You're representing a new way of thinking about community development. The connection crackled to life on the large screen they'd installed in the community center. Faces appeared. Elderly council members, young technical students, women in colorful saris all gathered in their village's meeting hall. The contrast between their traditional setting and the modern technology they were using struck Maria as a perfect symbol of the bridge they were trying to build. Namaste, Maria began, using the greeting she'd practiced. Thank you for reaching out to us. We're excited to learn about your community and how we might work together. The village leader, an elderly man named Rajesh Kumar, spoke first. We watched your presentation with great interest, he said, his English careful but clear. Our village has been offered many solutions from big companies, but they never understand our real needs. Your approach, community-driven innovation, this speaks to our hearts. For the next 2 hours, the conversation flowed between technical discussions and cultural exchange. The village's young engineers shared their ideas for adapting the solar systems to their climate. Women leaders spoke about the importance of including traditional knowledge in any new implementation. Everyone contributed to building a picture of what success would look like in their context. What you're describing isn't just an energy project, Maria realized aloud. It's a way to preserve and enhance your community's identity while moving forward technologically. The nodding heads on the screen confirmed her understanding. This was exactly what they'd been trying to explain to other potential partners who had approached them with pre-packaged solutions. As the call concluded, both sides had homework to do. The village would begin mapping their resources and organizing their implementation team. Maria's group would adapt their training materials and technical specifications to match the village's needs. One more thing, Rajesh said before they disconnected. There are other villages watching what we do. If we succeed, they will want to follow our path. Maria smiled, remembering how their own project had spread from one store's cooling system to a citywide movement. That's exactly how it should work. The next few weeks became a crash course in international project management. Tesla's resources proved invaluable, with Dr. Chang helping to navigate the complex logistics of cross-border collaboration. But the real breakthrough came from unexpected sources. Roosevelt High's language department offered translation services. The local Indian restaurant owner provided cultural insights and connections. A retired Peace Corps volunteer who lived in the neighborhood shared lessons from decades of international development work. This is what community really means, Diana observed as they prepared training materials in multiple languages. It's not just about sharing resources, it's about sharing knowledge and connections. The first test of their international framework came when the village encountered an unexpected challenge. The initial solar panel design needed significant modification to withstand their monsoon season. Instead of simply providing a solution, Maria's team helped the village engineers develop their own adaptation. See how they integrated traditional water management techniques with modern solar technology? Mr. Garcia pointed out during a progress review. That's something we never would have thought of from here. The success of this first modification led to a series of innovations that improved the original design. The village engineers discovered ways to protect the equipment from extreme weather while actually increasing its efficiency. Their solutions were soon incorporated into the global framework, benefiting other communities facing similar challenges. This is how it's supposed to work, Maria explained during a presentation to potential funders. Each community doesn't just receive technology. They enhance it, adapt it, and share their improvements back to the network. As news of the India project spread, more international inquiries began arriving. A fishing village in Indonesia wanted to adapt the solar cooling system for their catch storage. A community in Kenya saw potential for powering their water purification systems. A neighborhood in Brazil wanted to learn about the training program. We need to scale our support structure, Dr. Chang advised during an emergency planning session. We can't personally manage every implementation. Maria had been thinking about this challenge. What if we created regional innovation hubs? She suggested. Each successful implementation becomes a center for training and supporting other communities in their region. The concept quickly evolved into a formal proposal, the Global Community Innovation Network, GCIN. Each hub would maintain the core principles of community-driven development while adapting the framework to their local context. It's like creating a living laboratory for sustainable development, Ms. Chen observed. Each community learns from and contributes to the whole network. The Indian village became the first international hub, hosting visitors from neighboring communities and documenting their adaptation process. Their success story, told in their own words and shared through the network, inspired others to believe in the possibility of community-driven change. 6 months after that first early morning email, Maria stood in front of a United Nations panel on sustainable development, sharing the story of how a small community solution to a broken cooling system had evolved into a global movement for sustainable innovation. The technology is important, she concluded, but it's not the most important part. What matters is believing that every community has the capacity to solve its own challenges, if given the right tools and support. The presentation ended with a live video connection to various hubs around the world. The Indian village showed their modified solar arrays now powering not just homes, but a new community education center. The Indonesian fishing village demonstrated their adapted cooling system. The Kenyan community shared data on their water purification project. Back in South LA, watching the presentation with pride, Mr. Garcia turned to Diana. Remember when we thought we were just fixing a broken cooler? Diana smiled, updating the HE network's global impact statistics on her laptop. We were fixing something much bigger. We just didn't know it yet. That evening, Maria sat in her family's store, adding new entries to her original notebook. The pages were now filled with notes, in multiple languages, sketches from different cultures and solutions she never could have imagined when she first started. "Your father and I had such small dreams when we came to this country," her mother said, joining her. "Just to give our children a better life. We never imagined you would help give so many others a better life too." Maria looked around the store, at the solar system that had started everything, at the community bulletin board now filled with global connections, at the faces of neighbors who had become partners in a worldwide movement. "Maybe that's the biggest lesson," she said, starting a new page in her notebook. "Sometimes the smallest dreams, when shared with others, can grow into something that changes the world." Outside, the sun set on another day in South LA, its rays catching the solar panels that had become symbols not just of sustainable energy, but of community empowerment. In time zones around the world, other communities were waking up to continue the work of innovation, each adding their own unique contribution to a movement that had grown beyond any single person or place. The revolution that had started with one family's need had become a global demonstration of what communities could achieve when they believed in their own power to create change. The global expansion brought new challenges that tested the program's adaptability. One morning, Maria received an urgent message from the Indonesian fishing village. Their modified cooling system had encountered an unexpected problem with salt, air corrosion. "This could actually help us improve the whole system," Maria explained during an emergency video conference. "If we can solve this for coastal communities, it opens up possibilities we hadn't even considered." The solution came. Through another example of cross-cultural innovation, the village elders remembered traditional techniques for protecting equipment from sea air, which they combined with modern materials science. The resulting modification not only solved their immediate problem, but created a more robust system for all coastal installations. "See how each challenge makes the network stronger?" Diana observed, documenting the process for their growing database of community solutions. "It's like we're building a living library of innovation." The success of the coastal modification led to an unexpected development. A major marine research institute reached out, interested in adapting the community-based approach for their global ocean monitoring stations. "This is different from our usual projects," Dr. Chang cautioned during the preliminary discussions. "We're talking about high-tech scientific equipment, not just basic energy needs." But Maria saw the potential. "It's still about adapting technology to local conditions and empowering communities to maintain their own systems. The principles are the same, even if the application is more complex." The marine project became a testing ground for expanding their model into more specialized fields. Local fishing communities near the monitoring stations were trained not just in maintaining the equipment, but in collecting and interpreting data. Traditional knowledge of ocean patterns complemented the scientific measurements, creating a more comprehensive understanding of marine ecosystems. "This is what real sustainability looks like," Maria explained during a presentation to other research institutions. "When scientific knowledge and community wisdom work together, we get better results than either could achieve alone." The network's growth also attracted attention from unexpected quarters. A group of venture capitalists approached with an offer to commercialize the system, promising to make it more efficient and profitable. "But efficiency isn't our only goal," Maria argued during a tense meeting. "The community involvement, the knowledge sharing, the local adaptations, these aren't inefficiencies to be eliminated. They're the core of what makes this work." The venture capitalists left disappointed, but the experience prompted an important discussion within the network about maintaining their principles while scaling up operations. They needed to find a balance between growth and preserving the community.
Measuring growth by numbers on
Implementation empowers its community. This led to the development of new metrics for evaluating projects, ones that considered factors like community engagement, knowledge transfer, and local innovation alongside traditional measures like energy output and cost savings. The expanded framework proved its worth during their next major challenge. A drought-stricken community in Ethiopia wanted to adapt their solar system for water management. The technical solution was straightforward, but the social dynamics were complex. Water rights are sensitive here, the local coordinator explained during their initial assessment. Any new system has to work within existing community agreements. Instead of pushing forward with the technical implementation, Maria's team spent time understanding the traditional water management systems that had served the community for generations. The resulting hybrid solution combined solar-powered pumps with traditional distribution methods, respecting both the physical and social infrastructure. This is why the community-based approach matters, Maria explained to a group of international development experts who came to study their model. Technology alone isn't enough. You need to understand how it fits into the existing social fabric. By the end of the year, the Global Community Innovation Network had grown to include over 50 hubs across 6 continents. Each hub had its own unique challenges and solutions, but all were connected through a shared commitment to community-driven innovation. It's like we've created a new kind of university, Diana observed, where every community is both teacher and student. The network's success began influencing policy discussions at national and international levels. Traditional aid organizations started incorporating community-based approaches into their programs. Even large corporations began reconsidering their top-down implementation models. But we have to be careful, Maria cautioned during a network-wide video conference. As others adopt our methods, we need to ensure they understand that this isn't just about technology transfer. It's about believing in communities' ability to solve their own problems. This message resonated particularly strongly in a remote mountain village in Nepal, where the community had been offered various solutions by well-meaning organizations over the years. None had lasted because they hadn't involved the community in their development and implementation. When we first heard about your network, we were skeptical, the village leader admitted during their initial consultation. But then we saw how other communities like ours had adapted the system to their needs. That's when we understood this was different. The Nepalese project became another example of how local knowledge could enhance the basic framework. The villages, understanding of high-altitude conditions and their traditional building techniques, led to innovations in cold-weather solar applications that benefited similar communities around the world. As the network continued to grow, Maria never forgot the lesson she'd learned from her family's store. Sometimes the most powerful solutions come from the simplest needs. Each new challenge, each adaptation, each community success story added to their collective knowledge and strengthened their shared purpose. We're not just building a sustainable energy network, she wrote in her ever-present notebook. We're building a new way of thinking about how communities can work together to create change. The revolution that had started in South LA had become a global movement, proving that when communities believe in their own power to innovate, there's no limit to what they can achieve. The first warning signs appeared on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning. Maria was reviewing progress reports from various network hubs when Diana burst into the community center, her face unusually serious. "We have a problem," she announced, setting her laptop on the table. "Someone's trying to patent our community-based implementation model." The screen showed a patent application filed by Global Tech Solutions, a multinational corporation known for aggressive acquisitions in the renewable energy sector. The application detailed a system and method for community-based energy solutions that looked suspiciously familiar. "They've basically taken our open-source framework and tried to claim it as their own," Diana explained, scrolling through the documents. "If this goes through, they could legally prevent communities from implementing our model without paying them licensing fees." Maria felt her stomach tighten. They deliberately kept their innovation framework open source to ensure it remained accessible to all communities regardless of their resources. This attempt to privatize their collective work threatened everything they'd built. "Get Dr. Chang on the line," Maria said, already pulling out her phone to contact their legal team at the Environmental Justice Clinic. "We need to coordinate our response before this goes public." Within an hour, the community center transformed into a crisis management hub. Representatives from network communities worldwide joined via video conference, their faces reflecting a mix of anger and determination on the large screen. This isn't just about the patent, Dr. Chang explained, joining them virtually from Tesla's headquarters. Global Tech has been acquiring smaller renewable energy companies across Asia and Africa. They're trying to control the entire sustainable energy market in developing regions. Rajesh Kumar, speaking from the Indian Village Hub, shared his perspective. We've already received letters from their lawyers, claiming our implementation infringes on their pending patents. They're trying to intimidate communities before the patent is even granted. Similar reports began flowing in from other hubs. Global Tech had launched a coordinated campaign, combining legal pressure with promises of official certification for communities that agreed to their licensing terms. But we designed this system specifically to be open source, Maria protested, spreading out their original documentation. Everything we've developed has been publicly shared from the beginning. That's our strongest defense, confirmed Sarah Chen, Ms. Chen's sister, who had joined the call from Silicon Valley. But Global Tech is claiming they've added proprietary improvements that make it a new invention. They have a team of expensive lawyers and a track record of winning similar cases. Maria looked around the room at the faces of her community members, then at the screens showing their partners worldwide. Everything they'd built together, the training programs, the adaptation frameworks, the support networks, was at risk. We need to fight this, she declared, not just legally, but by showing the world what real community-based innovation looks like. The strategy session lasted well into the night. As they developed their response plan, a pattern emerged that reflected their network's fundamental strengths: distributed action, community engagement, and transparent collaboration. First, they would document every implementation, modification, and improvement made by network communities, creating an undeniable public record of their open-source development process. Mr. Garcia and Kevin began coordinating with technical teams worldwide to compile their collective innovations. Second, they would launch a global awareness campaign, not just about the patent dispute, but about the fundamental principle at stake: the right of communities to solve their own challenges without corporate gatekeepers. Third, they would accelerate their innovation process, demonstrating that true community-based development couldn't be contained by legal restrictions or corporate control. They think innovation only counts if it comes from corporate labs, Diana observed, updating their social media strategy. Let's show them what real grassroots innovation looks like. The response began immediately. Communities across the network started hosting open houses, demonstrating their local adaptations and improvements. Every modification, every solution, every success story was meticulously documented and shared publicly. The Indonesian fishing village showcased their coral-safe marine adaptations. The Nepalese community demonstrated their high-altitude modifications. The Ethiopian hub shared their integrated water management systems. Each implementation proved that the power of their model lay not in proprietary technology, but in community knowledge and adaptation. Media attention grew as the David versus Goliath story captured public interest. Local news outlets covered community demonstrations, while international networks picked up on the broader implications for sustainable development. This isn't just about solar panels or energy systems, Maria explained during a televised interview. It's about who gets to innovate, who gets to solve problems, who gets to shape the future of their own communities. Global Tech responded with a sophisticated PR campaign, promising professional standards and quality control through their licensing program. They highlighted potential risks of unauthorized implementations and offered communities official certification in exchange for accepting their control. But their approach backfired when network communities began sharing their safety records and quality metrics. The data showed that community-maintained systems actually performed better and lasted longer than corporate installations, thanks to local knowledge and continuous adaptation. They don't understand what makes this work, Mr. Garcia told a group of visiting journalists. You can't patent community knowledge. You can't license human innovation. You can't control something that grows from the ground up. The legal battle intensified as Global Tech's lawyers tried to rush the patent approval process. But the network's legal team, supported by pro bono attorneys from around the world, mounted a strong defense based on prior art and public documentation. Every FOIA post, every shared modification, every open-source contribution helps our case, Sarah Chen explained during a strategy update. Keep innovating, keep sharing, keep proving that this belongs to everyone. The turning point came from an unexpected source. A junior engineer at Global Tech, inspired by the network's mission, became a whistleblower. He revealed internal documents showing that the company had directly copied community innovations while claiming them as corporate developments. The revelation sparked outrage in the technology and development communities. Other companies that had been considering similar patent strategies quickly distanced themselves from Global Tech's approach. But Maria saw an opportunity beyond just defending their model. During an emergency network meeting, she proposed something radical: invite Global Tech to become a partner rather than an opponent. We're not against corporate involvement, she explained to skeptical community leaders. We're against corporate control. What if we showed them a better way to work with communities? The proposal led to a series of public dialogues about the future of sustainable development. Community leaders shared their experiences alongside corporate executives, demonstrating how open collaboration could benefit everyone. Innovation doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, Maria argued during a crucial presentation to industry leaders. When communities are empowered to solve their own problems, everyone wins. Companies can provide resources and expertise without controlling the process. The impact rippled through the sustainable energy sector. Other corporations began exploring partnership models that respected community autonomy while providing technical support. Investment firms developed new frameworks for funding community-led innovation without demanding ownership. This is how change happens, Ms. Chen observed during a quiet moment between meetings. Not just by defending what works, but by showing there's a better way forward. The patent challenge had an unexpected benefit. It forced the network to articulate and strengthen its core principles. Communities that might have drifted toward more traditional development models recommitted to the open-source, collaborative approach. Sometimes you don't realize what you're fighting for until someone tries to take it away, Diana reflected, updating their implementation guide to explicitly protect community innovation rights. As the legal battle continued, the network's practical work never stopped. New communities joined, new solutions were developed, and new adaptations were freely shared. The attempt to control their model had only made it stronger and more resilient. One evening, as Maria updated her original notebook with lessons from the patent fight, she found her first sketches of the store's cooling system. The simple drawings reminded her how far they'd come and why their approach mattered so much. Innovation isn't just about technology, she wrote on a fresh page. It's about believing that every community has the right and the ability to shape its own future. The next morning brought news that Global Tech was withdrawing its patent application. Their public statement acknowledged the value of community-led innovation and announced a new initiative to support open-source development. They finally understood, Dr. Chang said during the celebration at the community center. You can't own something that belongs to everyone. But Maria was already looking ahead, seeing new possibilities in the aftermath of their victory. The patent challenge had connected them with allies they never knew they had, from corporate whistleblowers to policymakers who recognized the importance of protecting community innovation. This wasn't just about defending our model, she told the gathered community members and virtual participants. It was about proving that there's a different way to think about progress, one that puts community, wisdom at the center of innovation. As the sun set on their victory celebration, Maria watched children playing near the solar installations that had started everything. They didn't see corporate patents or legal battles. They saw their community's ability to solve problems and create change. That, she realized, was the real victory. Not just protecting their innovation model, but showing future generations that they had the power to shape their own world. The aftermath of the patent battle brought unexpected opportunities. Universities began reaching out, interested in studying their community-based innovation model. Policymakers sought their input on new frameworks for protecting grassroots innovation. We need to document everything we learned from this fight, Maria told the network during their weekly coordination call. Not just the legal strategy, but how communities came together to protect something they believed in. The documentation project revealed patterns they hadn't noticed before. Communities that had faced similar challenges in other contexts, from water rights to land use, shared strategies for protecting collective knowledge. Traditional practices that had been passed down through generations offered insights into sustainable resource management. This isn't just about energy systems anymore, Diana observed, organizing the growing database of community knowledge. We're creating a blueprint for protecting all kinds of community innovation. The implications of their victory extended far beyond the immediate patent dispute. One morning, Maria received a call from the United Nations Development Program. They were interested in using the network's model as a framework for other community-based initiatives, from healthcare to education. Your fight against global tech showed us something important, the UNDP representative explained. When communities are truly empowered to innovate, they don't just solve technical problems, they transform entire systems. This recognition led to a series of international workshops where network communities shared their experiences with other grassroots organizations. The lessons learned from protecting their energy innovation model proved valuable across different sectors. The key is documentation, Maria emphasized during these sessions. Every improvement, every adaptation, every community contribution needs to be recorded and shared. It's not just about proving prior art. It's about showing the world that innovation comes from everywhere. The network developed new tools for tracking and sharing community innovations. Simple smartphone apps allowed local technicians to record modifications and improvements. Video libraries captured traditional knowledge that had never been written down. Online forums facilitated real-time problem-solving across continents. We're building more than just a defense against future patent threats, Ms. Chen noted during a training session. We're creating a living archive of human ingenuity. The corporate world was watching too. Other companies, seeing global tech's failure to control the network, began exploring more collaborative approaches. Some offered technical resources without demanding ownership. Others provided funding for community projects while respecting local autonomy. It's like they finally realized that control isn't the same as innovation, Dr. Chang observed during a board meeting at Tesla. Real progress happens when you support communities rather than trying to own them. The network's legal team worked with international organizations to develop new frameworks for protecting community innovation. They called it the Commons Innovation Protocol, a set of guidelines ensuring that grassroots solutions remained freely available while still allowing for commercial partnerships. Think of it as a vaccine against corporate takeover, Diana explained to a group of community leaders. By clearly documenting and sharing our innovations, we make them impossible to patent or control. The protocol quickly spread beyond energy projects. Farming communities used it to protect traditional agricultural techniques. Urban neighborhoods applied it to community planning innovations. Indigenous groups adapted it to preserve and share traditional knowledge. Back in South LA, the impact was visible in unexpected ways. Local businesses that had benefited from the solar program began exploring other areas for innovation. The auto repair shops that had helped build the first cooling systems were now developing their own sustainable technologies. See how it spreads? Mr. Garcia said, showing Maria a new modification he'd developed for electric vehicle charging. Once people realize they can innovate, they don't stop with just one solution. The community center had evolved too. What started as a meeting space now housed a state-of-the-art innovation lab, where residents could prototype new ideas and connect with other innovators worldwide. But it maintained its grassroots character. The walls still displayed children's artwork alongside technical diagrams. This is what victory really looks like, Maria wrote in her notebook one evening. Not just defeating one patent challenge, but creating a space where community innovation can flourish without fear. The network continued to grow, but now with a deeper understanding of what they were protecting. Each new community that joined brought not just technical challenges to solve, but wisdom to share and innovations to contribute. We've created something that can't be owned because it belongs to everyone, Maria explained during a global network meeting. And that's exactly how it should be. As the sun set on another busy day at the community center, Maria watched a group of young students working on their own innovation projects. They moved confidently between traditional knowledge and modern technology, unafraid to experiment and share their ideas. These children would grow up knowing that innovation wasn't something that only happened in corporate labs or university research centers. They would understand that every community had the power to solve its own challenges and contribute to global solutions. And that, Maria realized, was the true legacy of their victory over global tech. They hadn't just protected one innovation model. They'd helped create a world where community wisdom and grassroots innovation could thrive freely, benefiting all of humanity. The future of innovation, she wrote in her notebook, isn't about ownership. It's about collaboration, adaptation, and the belief that every community has something valuable to contribute to solving our world's challenges. 1 year after the year global tech victory, Maria stood before a very different audience than she was used to, a classroom full of eager sixth graders at Roosevelt Middle School. These weren't just any students, they were the first participants in the network's new Young Innovators program. "Who can tell me what innovation means?" she asked, scanning the diverse faces before her. A small girl in the back, reminiscent of Maria's younger self, raised her hand tentatively. "Is it when you make something better?" The girl, Sophie Martinez, asked. "That's part of it," Maria smiled. "But innovation isn't just about making things, it's about solving problems. And sometimes the best solutions come from the people who understand the problems best." The classroom was equipped with solar-powered tablets and recycled laboratory equipment, tangible symbols of how much had changed in their community. But today's lesson wasn't about technology. It was about something more fundamental: teaching the next generation to see themselves as problem solvers. "Let's try something," Maria said, pulling out her original notebook, now a bit of a legend in the community. "What problems do you see around you? In your neighborhood, your home, your school?" The students' responses came quickly, revealing insights that often escaped adult observers. Sophie mentioned how her grandmother struggled to read prescription labels. Another student, Marcus, described his family's challenges with unreliable public transportation. Each observation reflected deep understanding of their community's needs. "This is exactly how our network started," Maria explained, sharing the story of her family's store and the broken cooling system. "We didn't wait for someone else to solve our problem. We looked at what we had and figured out a solution together." The Young Innovators program had been Diana's idea, born from watching how children naturally engaged with the network's projects. "They don't see limitations the way adults do," she had argued during the planning meetings. "They just see possibilities." The program quickly spread beyond South LA. Each network hub adapted it to their local context, but the core principle remained the same: empowering young people to become community innovators. In the Indian village, children learned to combine traditional knowledge with new technologies. The Indonesian fishing community taught students about marine conservation alongside solar engineering. The Ethiopian hub integrated water management principles into their youth curriculum. "We're not just teaching them about technology," Ms. Chen explained during a teacher training session. "We're showing them how to think critically, work collaboratively, and believe in their own ability to create change." The impact became visible in unexpected ways. Sophie's observation about prescription labels led to a student-designed project for creating audio labels using recycled smartphone parts. Marcus's transportation concerns sparked a community mapping initiative that helped optimize local bus routes. "See how they naturally think in terms of community solutions?" Maria asked during a network review meeting. "They don't separate technical problems from social ones. They see the whole picture." Dr. Chang, who had become a strong advocate for youth involvement in the network, arranged for Tesla to provide resources for student projects. But he insisted that the support come without corporate branding or control. "This has to remain their space to innovate," he emphasized. "We're just providing tools, they decide how to use them." The program's success attracted attention from educational institutions worldwide. Traditional schools began questioning their approach to teaching science and technology. Why were they limiting innovation to specialized classes when it could be integrated into everything? Innovation isn't a subject, Maria argued during an educational conference. It's a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world as something you can help shape. But the program faced challenges too. Some parents worried about their children getting too involved in community projects at a young age. Others questioned the practical value of teaching innovation skills in communities with limited resources. Maria addressed these concerns head-on during a parent meeting at Roosevelt Middle School. "Look around this room," she said, gesturing to the solar-powered lights, the efficient cooling system, the recycled furniture. "Everything you see started as a problem someone decided to solve. Don't we want our children to know they have that same power?" The turning point came when the students themselves began showing results. Sophie's audio label project won a national science fair, attracting interest from pharmaceutical companies. Marcus's transportation mapping system was adopted by the city planning department. But more importantly, the students were changing how their communities viewed problems. When the neighborhood faced a new challenge, people started asking, "What do the young innovators think?" "This is how we ensure our network's future," Diana observed, watching a group of students present their latest projects. By teaching them not just how to use technology, but how to create solutions that serve their communities. The program evolved as students provided feedback and suggested improvements. They added mentorship components, where older students guided younger ones. They created online platforms for sharing ideas across different communities. They organized youth innovation festivals that celebrated creativity and problem-solving. One day, Maria noticed Sophie staying late after class, working intently on what looked like a new design in her own notebook. "What are you working on?" Maria asked, recognizing the familiar concentration she had once shown at that age. "My grandmother's not the only one who has trouble with medicine labels," Sophie explained. "I'm thinking if we modify the audio system, maybe add some features for different languages. And what if we could make it work without needing new batteries all the time?" Maria smiled, seeing her younger self in Sophie's determined expression. "Tell me more," she said, pulling up a chair. As Sophie explained her ideas, Maria realized they had achieved something even more important than creating sustainable energy solutions. They had created a new generation of innovators who saw community challenges as opportunities to make a difference. The Young Innovators program wasn't just teaching skills, it was changing mindsets. These children would grow up knowing that innovation wasn't something that happened somewhere else, by someone else. It happened here, in their communities, through their efforts. "You know what the best part is?" Sophie asked, showing Maria her notebook filled with sketches and ideas. "When I solve this problem, I can share it with other communities. Maybe someone else can make it even better." That evening, during the network's weekly video call, Maria shared Sophie's project with other hub leaders. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Students in different communities offered suggestions, shared similar challenges, and proposed collaborations. "This is exactly what we hoped would happen," Ms. Chen said, watching the young innovators interact across continents. "They're not just learning from us, they're creating their own networks, their own solutions." The program's impact extended beyond specific projects. Teachers reported increased engagement in regular classes. Parents noticed their children taking more initiative in solving household problems. Community leaders saw young people getting more involved in local issues. "Innovation education isn't just about creating new things," Maria explained during a UNESCO presentation. "It's about creating new possibilities. When young people believe they can solve problems, they start seeing opportunities instead of obstacles." Masi. The program completed its first year. The network organized a global youth innovation summit. Students from different hubs presented their projects, shared challenges, and collaborated on solutions. The energy and creativity in their interactions showed the true potential of community-based innovation. "Look at how naturally they collaborate," Diana observed during the summit. "No one's worried about patents or ownership. They just want to solve problems and help each other." The summit became an annual event, growing larger each year as more communities joined the network. but it maintained its grassroots character, focusing on real problems and practical solutions rather than competition or individual recognition. Back in her classroom at Roosevelt Middle School, Maria added a new section to her original notebook. Alongside the technical drawings and project notes, she started documenting the stories of young innovators like Sophie, the next generation of community problem solvers. The future of innovation isn't in corporate labs or university research centers, she wrote. It's in classrooms and community centers where young people are learning to believe in their own power to create change. As she looked up from her writing, she saw Sophie working with a group of younger students, explaining her audio label system and encouraging them to suggest improvements. The site confirmed what Maria had always believed. Innovation wasn't just about technology or resources. It was about empowering people to believe they could make a difference. The Young Innovators program had become more than just an educational initiative. It was a bridge to the future, ensuring that the network's principles of community-driven innovation would continue through the next generation and beyond. The alert came during a routine morning check of the network's global monitoring system. Multiple hubs across 3 continents were reporting unprecedented weather patterns affecting their solar installations. Climate change, long predicted by scientists, was now directly impacting their communities in ways they hadn't anticipated. The heat waves in India are exceeding our system's design parameters, Rajesh reported during an emergency network call. And the new storm patterns in Indonesia are testing our weatherproofing modifications. Maria studied the data streaming in from affected communities, her concern growing. This wasn't just about protecting their installations. It was about adapting their entire approach to meet increasingly severe environmental challenges. We need to do more than just react to these changes, she told the assembled network leaders. We need to help our communities become more resilient, and we need to do it fast. The network's response reflected how far they'd come from their early days. Instead of a top-down solution, each hub began sharing their local observations and adaptations. The Indian village had already developed heat-resistant modifications for their solar arrays. The Indonesian community had created early warning systems for extreme weather. The Ethiopian hub had integrated traditional weather prediction methods with modern monitoring technology. This is exactly why our model works, Diana explained during a planning session. We don't need to wait for a universal solution. Each community can adapt based on their specific challenges while sharing what they learn. Maria organized the incoming data into patterns. Despite different geographical locations, certain commonalities emerged. Communities near coastlines faced similar challenges with salt spray and storm surge. Desert regions struggled with heat and dust. Mountain areas dealt with extreme temperature variations. We need to create adaptive frameworks, she proposed to the network. Not rigid solutions, but flexible approaches that communities can modify based on their local conditions. The Young Innovators program proved unexpectedly valuable in this effort. Students across the network contributed observations and ideas that adults had overlooked. Sophie's class at Roosevelt Middle School developed a simple but effective dust removal system for solar panels, inspired by how local plants dealt with drought conditions. Children see patterns we miss, Ms. Chen noted. They're not bound by conventional thinking about what's possible. Dr. Chang mobilized Tesla's resources to support the community adaptations, but in a new way. Instead of providing finished solutions, the company offered testing facilities and technical validation for innovations developed by network communities. This is the future of corporate community partnership, he explained. We provide tools and expertise, but the solutions come from the people facing the challenges. The network's response to climate challenges attracted attention from environmental organizations and government agencies. Many wanted to replicate their success, but Maria insisted on maintaining their core principle. Solutions had to come from communities themselves. We can share our framework, she explained during a UN climate conference, but each community needs to develop their own adaptations. That's what makes the solutions sustainable. Back in South LA, the Rodriguez family market became a testing ground for new adaptations. The original solar cooling system evolved to handle longer and more intense heat waves. The vertical solar installations were modified to protect against increasingly violent storms. "Remember when we thought we were just fixing a broken cooler?" Mr. Garcia asked, helping install the latest modifications. "Now we're helping communities around the world adapt to climate change." The network's approach proved remarkably effective. While traditional infrastructure often failed under extreme conditions, community-maintained systems showed greater resilience. Local knowledge combined with technical innovation created solutions that worked in real-world conditions. "This is more than adaptation," Maria wrote in her notebook. "It's about building community resilience through innovation. When people understand and maintain their own systems, they can respond more quickly to changes and challenges." The success of their climate adaptations led to an unexpected opportunity. The World Bank approached the network about scaling their model to help vulnerable communities worldwide prepare for climate impacts. "But we have to do it our way," Maria insisted during negotiations. "No shortcuts, no bypassing community involvement. Real resilience comes from empowered communities, not imposed solutions." The resulting program, called Local Solutions for Global Resilience, became a model for climate adaptation worldwide. It maintained the network's emphasis on community-driven innovation while providing resources and support for local adaptations. Maria watched communities across the network develop and share their climate solutions. She realized they'd created something even more valuable than technical innovations. They'd developed a way for communities to face environmental challenges without losing their autonomy or wisdom. "The future is uncertain," she told a group of young innovators. "But when communities believe in their power to solve problems, they can adapt to whatever challenges come their way." The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, carrying the official seal of the United Nations. The General Assembly was convening a special session on sustainable development and climate resilience, and they wanted Maria to present the network's model as a potential global solution. "This isn't just another presentation," Dr. Chang advised during their preparation meeting. "This is an opportunity to influence how the world approaches community-based innovation." Maria sat in the community center, surrounded by success stories from across the network. The walls displayed photos and data from hundreds of implementations, each one unique yet connected by common principles. How could she condense all of this into a single speech? "Tell them our real story," Diana suggested, noting Maria's concern. "Not just the successes, but the struggles. Show them why community-driven solutions work when other approaches fail." Maria spent the next week preparing, but not in the way most people would expect. Instead of rehearsing polished presentations, she video-called network communities gathering their stories and perspectives. Each hub contributed insights about what made their local solutions work. "It's not about presenting a perfect model," she explained during a network meeting. "It's about showing how real communities solve real problems." The journey to New York felt surreal. Just 3 years ago, she'd been a high school student worried about her family's store. Now she was preparing to address world leaders about community-driven innovation. The UN building was imposing, its glass towers reflecting the morning sun. Inside, Maria found herself in a world of suits, security badges, and diplomatic protocol. But she carried something that kept her grounded: her original notebook, its pages now worn and filled with years of community wisdom. "Remember who you're representing," Ms. Chen had told her before she left. "Not just our network, but every community that's ever been told to wait for someone else to solve their problems." The General Assembly Hall was packed with delegates from 193 countries. As Maria took the podium, she saw faces that represented both immense power and desperate need. How could she bridge that gap? She opened her notebook and began not with statistics or proposals, but with a story. 3 years ago, our family store's cooling system broke down, she started. We couldn't afford the conventional solution, so our community created our own. That could have been the end of the story. One small problem solved by one small community. But it became something more. She shared how their local solution grew into a global network, not through corporate expansion or government programs, but through communities recognizing their own power to innovate. She showed examples from villages, urban neighborhoods, and remote settlements, each adapting the basic framework to their unique needs. The world faces unprecedented challenges, she continued. Climate change, resource scarcity, economic inequality. Many think the solutions must come from the top down, from governments, corporations, or international organizations. But our network has proved something different. The most effective solutions come from the communities facing these challenges. The presentation included live video connections to network hubs. Community leaders shared their experiences directly with the assembly. The Indian village demonstrated how they'd adapted to extreme heat. The Indonesian fishing community showed their storm-resistant modifications. Each example proved that local innovation could solve global challenges. We don't need to choose between advanced technology and community wisdom, Maria explained. We need both. But the process must start with communities, not happen to them. The response was immediate and powerful. Delegates from developing nations particularly connected with the message, seeing possibilities for their own communities. Even representatives from industrialized countries recognized the potential of this bottom-up approach. But it was during the questions session that Maria made her strongest impact. When asked about scaling and standardization, she challenged the traditional development model. Standardization isn't always the answer, she argued. Sometimes we need to embrace diversity, in solutions, in approaches, in wisdom. Our network succeeds because it adapts to local conditions, not despite it. The session concluded with something unprecedented. The General Assembly proposed creating a new framework for supporting community-driven innovation based on the network's principles. But they wanted Maria and her team to help design it. We need to ensure it stays true to our core values, she told Dr. Chang afterward. This can't become another top-down program with community packaging. Back in South LA, the community celebrated their network's recognition, but Maria was already focused on the next challenge: how to help other communities discover and trust their own innovation potential. The real work is just beginning, she wrote in her notebook that evening. Now we have to prove that community-driven innovation can work at a truly global scale without losing its soul. The UN presentation marked a turning point, not just for their network, but for how the world viewed community-based solutions. It wasn't the end of their journey, but the beginning of something even bigger. The days following the UN presentation brought a flood of requests from governments and organizations worldwide. Everyone wanted to implement the Rodriguez model, as some had begun calling it, but Maria worried about how to maintain the community-centered approach at such a massive scale. We can't just create a template for them to follow, she explained during an emergency network meeting. Each implementation needs to grow from local needs and wisdom. The network leaders gathered virtually to discuss this challenge. Rajesh from India shared how his village had already begun mentoring nearby communities, creating a natural growth pattern that preserved local autonomy. The Indonesian hub described their experience adapting the model for different island cultures. Maybe that's our answer, Diana suggested, mapping the organic growth patterns. Instead of scaling up, we scale out, community to community, each one teaching the next. They developed what they called the wisdom web approach. Rather than creating a centralized system, they would foster connections between communities with similar challenges. Each successful implementation would become a seed for natural expansion. The UN committee was initially skeptical of this organic approach. They wanted metrics, timelines, and standardized procedures. But Maria stood firm. Real change doesn't happen on a spreadsheet, she argued during a follow-up session. It happens when communities discover their own power to innovate. To demonstrate the effectiveness of their approach, they organized a series of regional gatherings, where established network communities could share their experiences with newcomers. These weren't formal conferences, but practical workshops where people could see and touch working solutions. The Rodriguez Family Market hosted one such gathering, welcoming visitors from across the Americas. People crowded into the store, examining the evolved cooling system and discussing adaptations for their own communities. See how the questions they ask are different? Ms. Chen observed, watching the interactions. They're not asking, how do we copy this? But how do we adapt this for our needs? The success of these gatherings proved their point. Communities that learned through direct interaction with peers were more likely to develop successful, sustainable implementations than those following prescribed programs. Dr. Chang helped document this effect, providing data that showed how peer-to-peer learning led to more innovations and better outcomes than traditional development approaches. The evidence was clear. Community wisdom combined with technical knowledge produced the most effective solutions. But there's something else happening too, Maria noted during a review session. These connections are creating more than just technical solutions. They're building a global community of innovators. She was right. The network was evolving beyond its original focus on sustainable energy. Communities were sharing solutions for everything from water management to education, each innovation building on local knowledge while incorporating new technologies. The UN framework, when finally approved, reflected this organic approach. Instead of imposing standards, it provided resources and support for community-to-community learning. The Rodriguez Network, as it was now officially known, would serve as a guide rather than a governor. This is how real change happens, Maria wrote in her notebook that evening. Not through mandates from above, but through wisdom shared between equals. The story had come full circle. What began with one family's need had grown into a global movement, not by abandoning its roots, but by staying true to them. Every new community that joined the network added its own wisdom while learning from others. As Maria watched the sun set over South LA, she thought about all the communities around the world that were discovering their own power to innovate. The real revolution wasn't in the technology or the systems they'd created. It was in the simple truth they'd proven. When communities believe in their own wisdom, there's no limit to what they can achieve. 5 years after the broken cooling system that started everything, Maria stood in the expanded Rodriguez Family Market, now a community innovation hub and learning center. The original solar system remained, though modified countless times, serving as a reminder of how small solutions could spark global change. Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come, Diana said, helping set up for today's special event, the graduation of the first class from their Community Innovation Academy, a program that trained local leaders from around the world. The store had evolved along with their mission. One wall displayed a digital map showing real-time connections between network communities worldwide. Another showcased successful innovations from different hubs, each one a testament to local ingenuity combined with shared knowledge. But we never forgot where it started, Mr. Rodriguez said, proudly adjusting the framed photo of their first community meeting. Every big change begins with one small need. The graduating class represented 20 different countries, each participant ready to return home and seed new innovation hubs in their communities. They had spent 6 months learning not just technical skills, but the principles that made community-driven innovation successful. What you're taking home isn't just knowledge, Maria told the graduates during her address. It's a proven truth that every community has the wisdom and power to solve its own challenges. The ceremony was broadcast live to network hubs worldwide. On screens around the store, familiar faces from India, Indonesia, Ethiopia, and dozens of other locations joined the celebration. Each hub had its own success stories to share, its own innovations to contribute. Ms. Chen, now director of their educational programs, presented each graduate with something special, their own innovation. Notebook modeled after Maria's original. These aren't just for recording ideas, she explained. They're for documenting the wisdom your communities will create. The Rodriguez Network had grown beyond anything they'd imagined, but it maintained its core principle. Innovation comes from understanding local needs and trusting community wisdom. Every new hub added its own character while building on shared experience. The real measure of our success isn't in numbers, Maria reflected, watching the graduates share their plans and dreams. It's in how many communities now believe in their own power to create change. The store's original cooling system hummed quietly in the background, still functioning after all these years. Like the network itself, it had been continuously improved, adapted, and enhanced by community wisdom. But its heart remained the same, a solution born from necessity and nurtured by collective innovation. As the sun set on the graduation ceremony, Maria added one final entry to her original notebook, now preserved as a symbol of their journey. Innovation isn't just about solving problems. It's about believing that every community has something valuable to contribute to the world's solutions. The graduates departed the next day, carrying with them not just technical knowledge, but a proven model for community empowerment. They would face their own challenges, develop their own solutions, and add their own wisdom to the growing network of community innovators. The Rodriguez Family Market continued its dual role as both neighborhood store and global innovation hub. Local residents still came for groceries, but also to share ideas, learn from others, and contribute to the ongoing evolution of community-driven solutions. Ready for the next challenge? Diana asked, already tracking emerging needs across the network. Maria smiled, picking up her new notebook, the old one now safely archived. There will always be new challenges, she said, but now we know that communities working together can solve anything. Outside, the South LA sunset painted the solar panels gold, a fitting symbol for the precious wisdom that communities around the world were discovering within themselves. The revolution that started with a broken cooling system had become a global movement, proving that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest solutions. The morning news caught everyone by surprise. A massive earthquake had struck a remote region in Nepal, devastating local infrastructure and leaving communities isolated. Within hours, the Rodriguez Network's emergency response protocol activated as their Nepalese hub reached out for support. They need more than just disaster relief, Maria explained during an urgent network call. They need sustainable solutions that can work in crisis conditions. The network had faced natural disasters before, but this was different. The affected area included several communities that were just beginning to implement their innovation programs. The earthquake had destroyed not just buildings, but hope. We can't let them lose faith now, Diana insisted, already coordinating with other Asian hubs. The Indian and Indonesian teams immediately offered to send experienced community innovators to help. Within 48 hours, Maria found herself on a plane to Kathmandu, carrying not just emergency solar equipment, but something more valuable, the network's accumulated wisdom about community resilience. Dr. Chang had arranged for Tesla to provide essential materials.
But the seeing village cut off from power, schools and communities to football that made it the destruct my body.
People coming together, sharing resources, looking for ways to rebuild. We don't need temporary fixes, the local hub leader told her. We need to show our people they can build something better than what was lost. Working with local teams, they began implementing rapid response versions of their community innovation model. Solar-powered communication centers were established first, allowing isolated villages to coordinate with each other and share resources. The Young Innovators program proved unexpectedly valuable in the crisis. Children who had been learning about community-based solutions now applied their knowledge to immediate challenges. They helped design temporary shelters with innovative cooling systems, created water filtration methods using local materials, and established communication networks between villages. This is what resilience really means, Maria observed, watching young innovators teach elderly villagers how to maintain the emergency systems. Not just recovering from disaster, but growing stronger through it. The network's response attracted international attention. Aid organizations were amazed to see affected communities actively participating in their own recovery, developing solutions rather than just receiving help. Traditional disaster response focuses on immediate relief, Maria explained to visiting UN observers. But we're showing how communities can rebuild themselves if given the right tools and support. The Nepalese hub emerged from the crisis stronger than before. Their innovations in emergency response and community rebuilding became part of the network's global knowledge base. Other communities began incorporating these lessons into their own preparedness plans. Back in South LA, the experience led to new developments in the Community Innovation Academy. They added modules on crisis response and community resilience, teaching future leaders how to maintain innovation, even in extreme circumstances. Every challenge, even a disaster, is an opportunity to prove what communities can achieve together. Maria wrote in her notebook reflecting on the Nepal experience.